So here we have the R card, and as you can see, there's our section. So we have the pistils coming up here, and they're very light, so they're pretty easy to see. They go through the center into the ovary, which is here, and the stamen are surrounding them. It's almost a little bit easier to see on the 0 card. So if you're having trouble seeing it on the flash card or the art card, then look at the 0 and you can see all of those parts really well. So today we're going to look a lot at how this develops, how the ovary develops, because roses make rose hips, which is really cool. So this, as you can see, I wrote inferior ovary. Inferior just means that it's below where the flowers are attached. Where the petals are attached. And then if it's up above the petals, then it's called superior ovary. But this one right here is inferior. So let's take a look. We will start with some buds. All right, so here are our buds. There's a whole bunch of buds. Some of them are still completely covered in green, and then some of them are beginning to peek out a little bit, and this one is the biggest one. So we'll do the biggest and the smallest and see what's inside. All right, so in here, and let's just get these guys away from each other. So you can see all of the petals are wrapped around one another here, and there's some anthers with pollen on them. Those are falling off the filaments, part of the stamen or the stamina. So even here, at this early stage, the ovary is pretty round. You can tell that it's a prominent feature. Let's see if we can open it up just a little. Let's see how much I cut into it. All right, so you can see these pieces in the middle. They are, actually, you know what? I'm just gonna get the black. So why don't I get this one, and then we can put both of them up on the black background and get a better look. Nice. So here we have our less developed bud and our more developed bud, and you can notice some things right off. So if you want to compare them on your own, you can pause the video or we can talk about it together. So one thing I'm noticing are these sepals surrounding this flower. And then here, actually, you know what? I think these may be bracts. It's really hard for me to tell on this guy. They're kind of leaf-like, which makes me think that they are bracts, but I know that this flower, since it's a eudicot, doesn't have any tepals. So because these are the petals, the thing surrounding it is probably a sepal. And there's nothing else separate though, which makes me think it might be a bract. So on my card back here, what I'm gonna do is put a little line and I'm gonna write myself a question. I'm gonna say, is this a sepal or is this a bract? And that'll be something for me to look up, or when I find it, then I can go ahead and record it on there. So do you see how they're much smaller? You can see a lot of this rosebud, but they're still sort of pointing up. Here, they are surrounding it, so you can't even see any of the petals from the outside. So another thing that I'm noticing is that these are more red as it's more developed. And the anthers and the stamen with these little anthers on the end that have all the pollen, they're almost the same size. I mean, they're not really that much bigger. And the small one, they kind of dominate. So we'll take a closer look here. Kind of pull these back. I think I cut most of the female parts on this side, I think. So the ovary is the base of the female part. Oh yeah, look. So even there you can see, so there are the pistils. Remember how they were sticking kind of up in the center in the drawing? So here they are, right here, and there are multiple ones. I can't tell exactly, I think there might be 5. And they're going right down there into the ovary. Oh, maybe, okay, so here we are. As we keep pulling, getting more of them. Oh, wow. There's so many. Look, all of these, and you can tell because they go all the way back. So, do you see that they're not attached up higher? So right here, this is also really interesting because the petals and the sepals are called the perianth. So everything that's not either the male or female part that surrounds the flower is the perianth. And the anthers are right here. So the anthers are right next to the petals, and then the pistils are in the center of all of the anthers. So they don't actually interact a lot with one another. The ovary and the petals, they're not very close. All right, let's take a look at this guy. See if we can pull out. Oh, I think I cut it a bit more. Yeah, I did. All right, so I just pulled off a bunch of them. And these petals just wrap around one another in there. All right, so see how there's still some more here? I'm going to pull those up. So these are all pistil. These are all pistils. So here, this little yellowy part on the end is the sticky stigma, and then this style is red, and then it goes all the way down here into the ovary. So there are lots. See how these that I dropped? Those are all also pistils, part of them anyway, because they have to go down into the ovary. Nice. All right, so we'll leave those guys there and see if we can find a bigger flower. Okay, so here we have it. We can see all these beautiful petals on the outside. And then as we open it up, what has happened? The anthers are now no longer yellow. See that? Everything's kind of brown in there. So it's definitely already, might already be pollinated. All right, so I'm gonna try to cut in here without damaging too much. Sometimes it's hard when there are lots of petals. Okay, and I tried to cut it so that we would get one side with more. So over here, you can see that I did a good job of not cutting into any of the pistils. So we just have stamen. So many stamens. And then there's part of the ovary there at the base, that inferior ovary. And then over here, hiding underneath all of these stamens or stamina, plural, are the pistils. Right here in the center, there's a bunch of them. And they look really similar. They look a lot like they did before. So it's got these fuzzies at the base, and then they're red, and they have the yellow sticky stigma on the end. Awesome. And now let's take a look at one that's looking a little old and sad. Let's try this guy. Let's see if it's different. So this one might have been eaten by a bug a little bit. We're gonna see what's happening. Petals are just falling off. So as it's getting older, the petals are getting looser and falling off. Here in the center are poor anthers. So this whole thing is a stamen. So the stamen is this long white filament plus the anther on the end, and the anther has the pollen. There are lots of them, but now remember how at first these were bright yellow and then they got all brown. So now they're white and a darker brown. And we'll check out what's inside. Okay. So here's our ovary. Let's see if it's still fuzzy on the bottom. Yeah, there's a bunch of fuzz on this guy. And the pistils look very similar. So they're fuzzy on the bottom, red. They still have that bit of yellow on the ends. Then we'll take one that's even older and more sad. So here, this guy is looking like it's nearing the end of its, doesn't need these petals anymore. They're kind of just hanging on. Nothing is really viable. I don't think that there's a lot of pollen there still. Unfortunately, my blade is getting lots of stickiness on it. All right, so I'm gonna see if I can cut. So I don't know if you've watched the protection video, but you can see a lot of little prickles everywhere here. That is really trying to not have predators. All right, so everything up top is shrinking right here. And it looks like all we have left are the pistils, maybe. I think so. I don't know what that is on there, but I think these are just all pistil and all the stamen have fallen off. So this happens a lot. After the stamen of the pollen's already pollinated the female parts, then the stamen will just fall off. And so you're just left with the female parts. And they still have this nice red center, and they're still looking a little fuzzy there at the base. Yeah, but definitely all the stamen are gone. And let's see if there's any other, we'll do one more before we switch to a different rose. I have two different roses with us today. So the one that we're cutting open right now is a knockout rose, which is the one that's in the drawing. And the one that I'm going to show you in a little bit is different. I don't know what kind it is. Okay, so here we go. It's progressing a little. There were no petals. Woo! No more red on these guys. They're just totally dried. And it looks like we can start seeing these ovules right here. Instead of just being fuzzy on the end, they're starting to develop into little seeds right there. All right. So I didn't have any really large or well-developed rose hips from the knockout. So what I did was I used a different rose. And it's much bigger. So here's our rose hip. It might not be fully developed, but it'll get us a little closer. All right, so not a knockout rose. So already I am seeing that this is really different. So look at this. I'm wondering if each one of these guys is the base. So this is, and actually there's going to be a seed in there. So those are all the ovules and all of the, oh look, you can even see some of the pistils up here. All right, so let's see if I can cut down this way so I can get some of the ovules on each side. Oof. So people make rosehip tea, and this is what they're using. They're using this part, it's called the rose hip. So it's not just one seed, because there's a bunch of seeds in here. Remember we saw those different pistils. Oh, whoa. Okay, so here's this little guy right here. This is one of the things that I was seeing. It almost looks like a miniature version of this. It's been raining a lot, so that might be why this is a little more wet. You can see there are all the pistils right there in the center. And they're attaching to these guys. So remember how at first it was just really fuzzy, then they started getting a little bit bigger. Looks like now they've gotten bigger still. So I'm gonna try cutting off this. Exterior section. So there's still a lot of fuzziness. Lots and lots of fuzz. But there are also these larger just flew across the room. All right, let's see if we can find one of these guys. I think this one is more ripe up here. So I wonder if that is how it's gonna go. That the more ripe ones will be higher up. All right, so let's see if we can just cut this guy. Oh. It's a little tricky. They're very, very tough. All right. There we are. So it looks like right in the center is where our ovule was, where the seed should be developing. And there it is. Part of it anyway. So pretty small. And it's got this very, very tough covering on it, which the rose, as we've seen, likes to protect itself in lots of ways. So I think this is just another one of its protection mechanisms. So here are all these little ovules in amongst the hair down in here. And then the petals used to be here, and then the sepals were inside. I mean, the petals and then the stamen were right here. But they are no longer there. All right, so let's take a look at, oh, no. Okay, so one more time, all the way through, we're gonna look at the development of the flowers. So we had our little one back here, was our first one, and the anthers are super bright yellow. Then as it got a little older, they're still yellow, and the pistils also have that nice yellowy tip on them. That's the stigma, sticky stigma. Here are very red petals, and these are a little more, they're not as bright yellow anymore. And then they get a little bit more developed, and the petals are now turning this like really light, bright pink, but that's the color fading out of them. So the pistils look really still the same though. They've got the red with the cream tips on them. The anthers, I mean the stamens, which have anthers on them, are really different. So here, everything was kind of the same brownish color, and here the filaments have turned more white, and then the anthers are brown. And then here, there are no stamen at all, almost no petals. We've got one kind of sad petal hanging on there. And then we have the pistils that are still attached. There's still a little bit of red on them, but they're mainly drying up. And then our last one that we have of the knockout roses has even the very tops of the pistils are all dried out, and then it's going, let me see if I can turn this for you a little bit. So these are all dried out, top of the pistil, but it's coming down and it's beginning to make these seeds down here in this inferior ovary, which is called the rose hip. All right, so just one more cool thing I want to show you about the rose. And I don't know that all roses do this. I know that the two that we have do this, but knockout roses are a really great example. So whenever there's a new growth, it's red, which I just think is really cool. So sometimes the veins are red like they are in the drawing. And my knockout rose, the one I drew was not mine. The veins were really red, and maybe that's because it was new, because if you see, all of that new growth is super red, and you can tell that that is new because it's red. And there are other ways to tell, but that's one way. If you look at a big rose bush and you see some red pieces in it, those are all the new growth. What's interesting as well is that poison ivy does the same thing. So when poison ivy comes up in the spring, it's not always green. So when it first comes up, it has that red in it. So you gotta watch out. Maybe it's a warning or something, I'm not sure. Nature uses lots of colors like that. But anyway, thanks for joining me today. And I hope that you get to look at some roses, and if nothing else, try to look at those prickles and see how they're different from thorns. And we will see you next time. Bye, guys.